Welcome to a new episode of our S4In Changemakers podcast. For this episode, I'm very happy to welcome Götz Erhardt, Chief Executive Officer of Industry X in Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Accenture. You can expect an energy-loaded talk about circular economy, digitalization, and of course, flexibility in the energy sector. Götz, it's an honor to have you as our guest.
Thank you very much, Thea, for having me. I'm really delighted to be part of your Changemakers series.
Well, with over 30 years of experience in management consulting and strategic advisory, and especially a focus on Industry X, which combines digital transformation, automation, sustainability, and data ecosystems. Can you please tell us a bit more about your professional journey and what brought you to this intersection of, let's say, industry and innovation?
Yes, I started my career almost 30 years ago with, at that time, a world which was slightly different. One of my first jobs was, amongst others, for the German railways. Part of the reunification was the merge of the former Deutsche Bahn with the Deutsche Reichsbahn, and a lot of sort of investment at that time to actually not only combine the companies, but to modernize the fleet, which currently isn't that modern anymore. So there's still, the full circle and enough new investment required. But also in the realm of the energy, the utilities industries at that time, the Eastern European lignite, both mining, the so-called Laubach, which not only mined the lignite, but also had significant power-producing generation assets running on lignite coal. And part of my engagements was actually not only to sort of rationalize and streamline these companies, but also to make the assets more productive, also environmental protection in the sense of filter technology and other sort of environmental technologies which needed to be deployed to make the assets more environmentally, I wouldn't say it safe, but at least less polluting. And one of the topics which also was part of my sort of start into my professional career was helping one of these companies to build a thermal waste power generation plant. There was probably my, although I never sort of deliberately ventured out into the energy and the basic materials industries, I started there and probably been there ever since, because it's also an industry from energy generation, transmission, distribution to some of the energy intensive companies, be it steel, chemicals, cement, which have changed quite dramatically. And that's probably another element of my passion, on the one hand, a key driver of economic growth and wealth, but on the other hand, need to change to protect the environment and the climate. So they play an important role.
One of your big focuses are circular economy and Industry X. Industry X as a framework brings together, as I already mentioned, digital transformation, automation, and sustainability. How does that concept of circular economy fit into this vision, particularly in the energy industry or energy intensive companies?
I think in circular economy, one of the topics which probably is less understood, at least within sort of the general public, is that there are some parts of the so-called circular economy which are already working quite well, both from a supply chain, from a mass and energy balance perspective. And one example clearly is stainless steel. So today, roughly 98, 99% of all stainless steel is produced using scrap. So basically spent or used stainless steel. This is where it works well. Also, some other sort of precious metals, platinum, for instance, gold, silver, they all work with relatively good recovery rates, and the the energy, the heat, and some of the other separators you need to sort of reclaim the material, it's actually quite effective and cost effective, simply because of the inherent value, right? And if you think about stainless steel, I mean, the energy has been spent once, right, by the primary melting. So it's actually a remelting process. So this is where it works well. Think about other assets, other types of material, it's actually much more difficult, right? Not only difficult because of the supply chain, but because of mixed materials. Perennial topics are textiles. There's so many textiles which are used because of and bought because of fast fashion, but they are virtually all of them are mixed fibers. So it's not recycling, it's not circular, it's at best downcycling and quite costly. The same with polymers, right? I mean, if you look at the industry and all the claims about ocean waste and what we all should do to avoid further pollution of the oceans, the problem with plastics is they are not one of a kind. And mechanical recycling is actually largely downcycling and needs to be sort of very good separation, cleansing, preparation. And then chemical recycling is energy intensive, and with the current cost of carbon emissions, so basically the abatement cost per ton, it's not really economically viable to go into chemical recycling. So all of the chemical producers and some of the oil producers as well explore chemical recycling of polymers. But the simple fact of the matter is some of the stuff we produce and buy is simply too cheap because a lot of the externalities, as economists call it, have not been internalized, right? So it's free riding on environmental pollution.
You just said the problem is that, for instance, polymers or plastics are too cheap, so that lots get into the environment, and that they are very hard to, not only recycle but also get them into the circular economy. Besides, they need a lot of energy and often end up in nature. What can a circular economy point of view do to get rid of plastic in the environment and thus save resources?
No, I mean, the plastic topic is really a super hard one. I mean, we need to be very, very clear about that. So, I mean, let's start with the benefits of plastics. They're durable, lightweight, cheap to produce, relatively robust. Right? I mean, think about the amount of plastics which has substituted glass and metal in car manufacturing. It's sizable, right? I mean, currently probably most of the volume, if not the weight in a car, probably the volume more than the weight in a car is plastics. Why? Because it's lightweight, it's easy to use. You can use elastomers, they are called, so foams like polyurethanes and seatings and dashboards. You can use rigid plastics, which are heat resistant. So, I mean, these are all benefits. Another benefit, if you sort of walk into an average supermarket, and the convenience part in sort of dairy and cheese and whatever, I mean, it's all packaged in single-use plastics. Which from a consumer's perspective is nice because you don't need to buy sort of large quantities. You can even have it sliced in a lot of varieties. So the problem here is simply we need to think about substitution. So where can we substitute single-use plastics to more recyclable or biodegradable materials? And on the other hand, probably avoid the use of plastics in some instances. And where it doesn't work, we need to get better at recycling.
And when you think about your work with your clients, are there actual examples or shifts toward a circular economy? Do you have an example where companies implement those strategies, for instance, in the plastics industry, where, do you have an example for that?
I think not example where it just works fine or perfectly, but I think examples where at least the volumes and some of the supply chains are more geared towards circular economy. So, for instance, BASF has engaged with a technology provider for automotive tire recycling. I mean, this is all synthetic rubber. It has steel in it for reinforcement, but the rest, I mean, it can be separated relatively easy, and this is then chemical recycling. We know that there is a lot of old, used, and spent tires being recycled. They're very often sort of collected at the tire shop or the automotive repair shop. So, I mean, the reverse supply chain is feasible. The same probably or similar things, and there have been experiments are with mattresses, which are typically out of polyurethane foam. So, but again, as long as the abatement costs are where they are, it is still cheaper to manufacture from virgin material than using recycled or chemical recycled materials. So I think it's more an economic than a technical problem at the current point in time.
Interesting. And is part of this economic problem the energy costs?
The energy costs are clearly part of the equation because, I mean, it's a technical problem of separation. As one of my good friends, a client, always says, think about you have to actually cook a nice dinner from the biotonne, right? That's the problem of recycling. I think it's an interesting picture, at least, or metaphor to start with. But all the separation needs, I mean, heat, right? And heat comes with energy, and the energy is either thermal energy generated by burning natural gas or in electric furnaces by electricity. So when the circular economy, especially when it goes from mechanical to the chemical recycling, so back to the basic materials, is an energy intensive process. But we shouldn't forget that also virgin materials, so from well to a steam cracker producing monomers, is also an energy intensive process. So it's, I guess one of the topics is not only the energy costs, which are a clear part of the equation, including logistics costs and costs for separation and sorting. It's also a question of our consumer habits, which, I mean, it's clear, right? I mean, take fast fashion. If young people or people buy T-shirts and garments for single use, I mean, think about the energy which has been used, the water, the colorants, the fibers.
I think we can spend a few more hours on circular economy. It's, I think, such a broad and very important topic, as you said. It's intertwined with so many aspects from not only the supply side, but also the demand side and many, many other things. But one of your other great expertise is digital transformation, and that's a key within the Industry X aspect, and has been also in combination with AI or artificial intelligence. I think the most beloved buzzword this year and the past years and the forthcoming years. Could you give us or put this into perspective for our listeners? What's actually happening right now, especially, for instance, in the energy sector?
It's actually a very good question, and one of the fields where I think there's, as always, right, there's a little bit hype in all of that, but at the core, the artificial intelligence revolution is a real one. And let me sort of briefly explain why. So first and foremost, there are varieties of artificial intelligence, and most of what we have seen in the past years was basically machine learning. So pattern recognition, generative AI, sort of the newest, one of the newest members, is still based on statistical correlations and frequencies, but it can handle more complex data sets with more robust outputs. And one example is, for instance, natural language, which was one of the first applications of generative AI. It just exploits the fact that in natural languages, there's a lot of redundancies. I mean, we just do not say each and every utterance is not a new one because we say Guten Morgen each morgen, right? And so it exploits these regularities. So the next step in the evolution, I think this is something where then the energy sector will benefit hugely, is cognitive AI, called now sort of agentic AI. So some of the topics in the energy system can be solved by machine learning. So finding patterns or regularities regarding micro weather or whatever it is to regulate supply and demand. Then on generative AI, it might be sort of topics around the management of energy sort of generating or transmitting assets. Right? So maintenance and inspection, for instance, in the field to avoid downtimes and blackouts because people do the wrong thing when managing these assets. I think the agentic side is then really interesting because if people would basically have agents in, let's take the household as an example, right? So the agent is active while we all sleep. And the agent knows when there is currently an oversupply in the electricity markets. You preload the washing machine and the agent starts the machine when the electricity prices are lowest. I mean, you never would get up in the night to save a couple of euro cents on your electricity bill. But this is something in the aggregate, the energy system, which would be more stable. There would be better matching of supply and demand. And as you know pretty well, based on S4N's business model, it would exploit opportunities for flexibility and therefore, if you will, sort of better matching of supply and demand. So I would say there will be a lot of instances where agents are sort of little helpers in managing and exploiting flexibility and better matching of supply and demand, where humans typically don't care that much or have better things to do.
So looking ahead from the development from generative AI to cognitive AI, that's perhaps a more speculative perspective or question from my side. What further developments do you see? So you just mentioned there will be the agents that can help us, but will we be able to predict power prices through sharp, forecasting models, or what's after these hype topics, but also actual topics in use?
So I think the cognitive AI is already there. And I think the combination of different agents through so-called super agents or orchestrators is another interesting fact. So this is actually where, because also the simple cognitive agents, they're based on routines, right? So there's a knowledge base, there is sort of simulated reasoning of the agent, which leads to an output. The more agents you can orchestrate, right, and to your point, right, so you have micro weather predictions, you have data around supply and demand peaks, you probably have data around sales of whatever it is, ventilators or ACs in DIY markets. So you can start building all sorts of interesting predictive models because you are able to not only to combine large data sets of various sources, but you have more or less, you can have an army of cognitive agents to basically do pieces of reasoning and then connect these agents and test some of their reasoning, if it's accurate or not, and then sort of rerun the models, the agents, and look if they come up with better predictions.
And then it raises the question, why don't other companies or more companies or utilities use those generative or cognitive intelligence more? Or why don't they implement it?
I mean, there's certainly some complacency in the sector. There's also a lot of innovation. I just came back from a large tech festival, the largest in Europe, which is called Vivatech in Paris. And you wouldn't believe how many startups there are in the energy sector, which try to sort of build agents or predictive models for all sorts of applications in the energy sector. So, I mean, they do not all will get unicorns, but I believe there will be the one or the other which could change the market. And I mean, just think about all the hype which is currently sort of in the market around intermittent storage or batteries. Yeah, you probably need batteries, but flexibility and better matching of supply and demand is always the better choice, right? It's always cheaper than the cost of a battery.
Flexibility is a great buzzword. That's also one topic I really wanted to ask you about, because since this January 2025, flexible electricity tariffs are mandatory for electricity supplies in Germany. So, however, that does not mean that they are able to offer those tariffs to their customers. And in regards to the startups you just got to know at the tech festival or other companies you meet in the sector, what are the main barriers to offering flexible tariffs, and how can they perhaps be overcome with those young companies?
The startups can actually help with, because from a retail utility, right, sort of selling electricity to household customers, I personally think offering these flexibility tariffs is not that difficult. I mean, it depends on where you set the price point per kilowatt hour, right? And what are your predictions ultimately how many people are loading their battery electric cars using a wall box in their own perimeter in the night. So I think from an optimal solution or optimizing function, it's not that difficult. It actually gets difficult if you try to offer sort of really competitive prices per kilowatt hour. So and then there I think there could be a good element, a good model for startups to basically predict loading patterns, peaks. So basically finding local optima within a very simple optimum. The very simple current optimum of flexibility tariff is within a loading window from 8 in the evening to, let's say, 7 in the morning, you need to load an average 50 kilowatt hour battery. I mean, that's not that complex, right? At a typical loading rate of 11 kilowatt hours an hour. So if you have full power for all the time, it would be 5 hours. So you have a couple of hours more. So the question is, how can you optimize the quote unquote, the flex capacity? This is actually, startups can actually, because it's all data, right? It's all sort of working with data and finding patterns, opportunities in the data which can be exploited using technology.
So when we not only look at the difficult optimization of those competitive prices, but also onto the supply of the flexibility, like from EV chargers to, you also mentioned heat pumps, also have increasingly flexible loads and need more electricity. How can digitalization or AI also help to realize that potential, not only to optimize those flexibilities that are there or possible to access?
From a user perspective, it's more or less a simple push of the button, right? I mean, if you take the EV charging, you just need to push the button. Loading is permitted or suggested or allowed using sort of optimal price points. It's a relatively dumb mechanism. But I mean, if you look at it from what's going on behind the scenes, and if there are probably more, if any smart device which has either excess capacity or storage, like a battery, would only charge within sort of optimal bands, you would simply see a clear impact on the grid. And I think there has been a lot of discussion around smart meters, which is an interesting one, but probably not a thrilling one. It's more around intelligent assets, right? All the assets which have storage, where you basically can optimize both energy consumption as well as energy storage in case they have a battery. That's when you have a lot of energy resources. And I would see that this clearly is an opportunity. And some things probably can't be optimized, right? At least I haven't seen it yet. I don't know what the technology innovation will bring. But for instance, fridges, right? I mean, you can't just turn them down, right? Because they then simply would stop cooling stuff, which is their main purpose. But other energy-intensive consumer devices like washing machines and so on and so forth, you can optimize them.
So when you look forward to the next, I don't know, let's say 5 years, do you think that I will switch on or switch off my washing machine then according to the power prices, or will it automatically do that?
It clearly should do that automatically, right? This is where the whole notion of sort of digital intelligence comes into play. It's just a signal and a switch. And there might be then more complex chains of interactions between devices. But as long as there is a consumer surplus, which I would argue if you can start swapping stuff, right? So your neighbor has PV on the roof and there is a sunny day, he doesn't charge his battery electric car and swaps his production or sells it to you at a discount. Why not?
I like the idea. So it's a change-making impact on our daily use of power consumption and production as well then. And this brings me to my last question I ask any of my guests, so our guest at SVN. Who's your favorite change maker? Who do you admire for his or her groundbreaking spirit?
It's probably, and this is more not that much the person, but the willingness, and there's probably more than this one, but you asked for one. So I think what I really liked is if people tackle some of the problems which no one dared to tackle. And I think as a European, even as a Canadian, the health system in the US is just crazy, right? Why shouldn't you give people access to healthcare? But in the US, it's actually quite a contested area. And I think Obama tackled this. I mean, he basically said, well, people should have access to healthcare, and went into a big political, really in shark-infested waters, and actually succeeded. Still debated until this day, and the current administration wants to get away, undo it. But I think that's a strong one. And Obama is just one example. But I like the courage of people who are willing to tackle problems where other people, even very strong-willed people, have not succeeded.
Thank you for your innovative and change-making impulse for our audience. I thought it was, we tackled a few topics in this short time. I know there's not always much time to dive into that, but I think they were very fruitful. And thank you very much, Götz, for your time.
Thank you very much, Thea. And thank you again.